What if I told you that every single day, your brain is making split-second calculations about whether to keep you conscious or shut you down completely? And that the line between being awake and blacking out is so razor-thin that a simple act like standing up too fast could flip that switch in under 3 seconds. Fainting isn't just feeling dizzy, it's your brain literally pulling the emergency brake on consciousness because it thinks you're about to die. And what happens in those moments when the lights go out is one of the most fascinating survival mechanisms evolution ever designed. Hit that like if you've ever felt that tunnel vision creeping in or woken up on the floor wondering what year it is. Because what you're about to discover about your own brain will make you realize that consciousness is way more fragile and incredible than you ever imagined. Here's the mind-blowing truth that most people never think about. Your brain is the greediest organ in your entire body. It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it demands roughly 20% of your blood supply at all times. Think about that for a second. 1/5 of all the blood your heart pumps is dedicated to keeping this 3-pound universe inside your skull running. Your brain is like a supercomputer that never powers down, processing millions of inputs every second, maintaining your heartbeat, regulating your temperature, storing memories, generating thoughts, and keeping you conscious of your own existence. But here's the catch: your muscles, which can switch to backup energy systems when oxygen runs low, your brain has zero backup plan. No oxygen for just 6 seconds and your brain starts shutting down non-essential functions. 10 seconds and you're unconscious. 4 to 6 minutes and you're looking at permanent damage. Your brain doesn't play games when it comes to blood flow, and fainting is its nuclear option when supply gets critically low. Let's break down what actually happens in those terrifying seconds before you hit the ground, because the sequence of events is like watching a high-speed biological cascade that's both brutal and brilliant. It usually starts with something triggering your nervous system standing up too quickly. Seeing blood, extreme pain, overheating, or even just standing still for too long. Your autonomic nervous system, which controls all the automatic stuff you don't think about, suddenly gets confused signals. In a normal situation, when you stand up, your blood vessels automatically constrict and your heart rate increases slightly to pump blood upward against gravity. But sometimes this system glitches. Your blood vessels dilate. Instead of constricting, your heart rate drops instead of rising, and suddenly gravity is winning the war against your circulation. Blood starts pooling in your legs, less blood reaches your brain, and your cerebral blood flow drops below the critical threshold of about 60 to 70% of normal. Now here's where it gets wild. Your brain detects this drop in blood flow almost instantly through specialized sensors called baroreceptors that are constantly monitoring blood pressure in your major arteries. These sensors are like tiny security guards screaming, "Alert! Alert! We're losing pressure up here." The moment they detect insufficient flow, your brain makes a calculated decision that seems counterintuitive, but is actually genius. It shuts down consciousness. Why? Because when you're standing, your brain is fighting gravity to get blood. But when you're horizontal on the ground, gravity becomes neutral and blood can flow to your brain much more easily. Fainting is literally your brain forcing you into a position where it can get the blood it needs to survive. It's not a malfunction, it's an emergency survival protocol that's been refined over millions of years of evolution. But the experience of fainting itself is absolutely surreal, and if you've been through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It usually starts with what doctors call prodrome warning signs that your brain is losing the battle. Your vision starts tunneling inward, going gray or sparkly at the edges as your visual cortex gets less oxygen. You might feel intensely hot or cold as your temperature regulation goes haywire. You get nauseated because your digestive system is one of the first things your brain sacrifices when it's triaging blood flow. You might hear a ringing or rushing sound as your auditory processing degrades. You feel weak, shaky, sweaty. Your body is basically screaming at you to lie down before it forces you to. And then, if you don't heed those warnings, the lights go out. The actual moment of losing consciousness happens so fast, you typically don't remember it. 1 second you're aware. The next second there's just nothing, a complete gap in your experience of reality, and then you're waking up confused, often not immediately remembering where you are or what happened. What's happening in your brain during that blackout period is fascinating and slightly terrifying. Your consciousness, that sense of being you, depends on widespread communication between different brain regions. When blood flow drops critically, the cortex, which handles higher thinking and awareness, loses power first. It's like when the power goes out in your house, the fancy electronics shut down before the basic systems. Your brainstem, which controls breathing and heartbeat, keeps working because it's more resilient and gets priority blood flow. So you're unconscious, but your body is still maintaining basic life functions. Recent neuroimaging studies have shown that during syncope, which is the medical term for fainting, there's a rapid decrease in activity across the cortex, particularly in areas responsible for sensory processing and self-awareness. Your brain essentially goes into ultra-lopa mode, conserving resources until blood flow is restored. Now let's talk about the different types of fainting, because not all blackouts are created equal, and understanding the differences could literally save your life or someone else's. The most common type is vasovagal syncope. That's the classic response to emotional stress, pain, or standing too long. About 1 in 3 people will experience this at some point in their lives. Then there's orthostatic hypotension, which is when blood pressure drops dramatically upon standing, common in people who are dehydrated, on certain medications, or have autonomic nervous system issues. There's situational syncope triggered by specific activities like coughing, urinating, or even laughing too hard, which seems ridiculous but happens because these activities can briefly increase pressure in your chest and reduce blood return to your heart. And then there are the dangerous ones, cardiac syncope, where the problem is actually with your heart's rhythm or structure. These fainting episodes come with zero warning, happen during exertion, and can indicate life-threatening conditions. If you faint while exercising or have a family history of sudden cardiac death, you need to see a doctor immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week, immediately. The recovery phase after fainting is its own weird journey that doesn't get talked about enough. When you first regain consciousness, you're typically confused and disoriented because your brain is rebooting and hasn't fully caught up with reality yet. You might feel exhausted because fainting is metabolically demanding. Your body just went through a crisis response. Some people experience what's called postictal state, borrowed from seizure terminology, where they're drowsy and foggy for minutes or even hours afterward. Your muscles might feel sore because when you faint, you don't fall gracefully like in movies, you collapse, and sometimes you hurt yourself in the process. Studies tracking people who fainted show that many experience anxiety about it happening again, which ironically can make them more likely to faint because anxiety can trigger the same autonomic responses. Here's where the science gets really interesting. Exercisers are now using advanced monitoring technology to predict fainting before it happens. Wearable devices can track heart rate variability, blood pressure patterns, and even subtle changes in skin conductance that precede syncope. Some experimental systems use machine learning algorithms trained on thousands of fainting episodes to recognize the physiological signature of impending blackout and alert the wearer to sit or lie down. Athletes in particular are benefiting from this tech because they're at higher risk during intense training. Military researchers are developing similar systems for pilots experiencing G-forces that can cause G-induced loss of consciousness, or G-aloke, which is catastrophic when you're flying a multi-million-dollar aircraft. The goal is real-time intervention, catching the cascade before consciousness is lost. But let's push into some surprising territory that connects fainting to broader medical understanding. Scientists studying syncope have discovered that people who faint frequently might actually have more resilient brains in some ways. There's evidence that repeated episodes of brief oxygen deprivation, as long as they're not causing injury, might trigger protective mechanisms similar to altitude training or ischemic preconditioning. The brain basically learns to function more efficiently with less oxygen. Obviously, this doesn't mean you should try to faint deliberately. That would be incredibly dangerous and stupid, but it reveals that our brains are more adaptable than we give them credit for. Researchers are exploring whether we can harness these protective mechanisms therapeutically for conditions involving brain ischemia, like stroke. Now let's paint a scenario that's becoming reality faster than you'd think. Within the next decade, we'll likely have neural interface technology sophisticated enough to monitor brain blood flow continuously and non-invasively. Your smartwatch won't just track your heart rate, it'll predict with 90% accuracy when you're about to faint and intervene automatically. Maybe it triggers a device that applies pressure to your legs, forcing blood upward. Maybe it releases a quick-acting medication that constricts blood vessels temporarily. Maybe it simply alerts you with enough warning that you can always get horizontal in time. For people with chronic syncope who currently live in fear of injuring themselves during unexpected blackouts, this could be Emergency rooms already see thousands of fainting-related injuries every year: head trauma, broken bones, lacerations from hitting objects on the way down. Predictive technology could reduce these injuries dramatically. This changed how I see consciousness itself. It's not some mystical force. It's an emergent property of blood flow and electrical activity, and it's shockingly easy to disrupt. Every moment you're aware of yourself, of the world, of thinking these thoughts, depends on a continuous supply of oxygenated blood to your neurons. Fainting is a reminder that consciousness is a privilege, not a guarantee, and that our brains will sacrifice awareness without hesitation to preserve life. It's humbling and kind of beautiful when you think about it. Your brain loves you enough to turn off your experience of existence if that's what it takes to keep you alive. Smash that subscribe button for more explorations into the mysteries of the human body. Drop in the comments if you've ever fainted and what it felt like, and share this with anyone who's ever wondered why they woke up on the bathroom floor. Because understanding what happens when the lights go out might just help you keep them on when it matters most.